Okay. Have I popped up on your in the app? I don't really know because I don't really know what you're looking at. But there's no notif, huh? Oh yeah. So you can see that. So you can see me waving right now. You can. Oh, okay, great. All right. Well, I gotta let you go then. I gotta start doing my thing. Ooh, okay. Bye. Love you. Okay. So I'm actually pretty nervous. All right. So, ooh, but I forget that this. Well, I was going to say that I forget that usually once the curtains open, I'm fine. But I'm actually feeling quite nervous right now. So anyway, so it's my birthday. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'm in Portugal, so that's a nice view over a small city in Portugal. There's the Vangela. All right. Ooh. Okay, we're gonna have to get to the good stuff soon. I don't know how long this will take. Um, I want to explain to you how the mind works. I think there's other stuff that I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it now. My mind's a bit blank because of the nerves. So I'm just going to jump into it. So, as you know, I call myself a philosopher or a psychophilosopher. So I'm interested in the intersection of, I'm interested in psychology, reason, all that stuff, thinking, and the sort of the implications for questions that have been asked in philosophy and morality and all that. So, in line with that, I went to a critical thinking conference last year too, and at one of them, I met a group of people who are working on a taxonomy of fallacies. What is a fallacy? So, a fallacy is typically defined as an error in argumentation. So, for instance, the masked man fallacy. Masked man fallacy is an informal fallacy in which you say, I know who Bob is, your friend Bob. I know who Bob is. That man there wearing a mask, I don't know who that is. Conclusion, that man is not Bob. That's a fallacy because there was an error in one of your premises. Um, you said you don't know who that masked man is, but actually you do. It's Bob. But you do not recognize that man. And if you were more specific in your other premise, you would have said that I typically recognize Bob when his face is shown. I do not recognize that man whose face is not shown, and then you can no longer draw the conclusion that man is not Bob. Logical fallacies are something that we do all the time. In fact, this taxonomy that they're working on is 1,000 items. But there's been some confusion because they're not all technically called fallacies. Some of them are what we call cognitive biases. And that's my main interest, cognitive biases. So let's talk about how cognitive biases are typically defined. Okay, so somebody might consider, so the person I asked might consider biases a misprocessing of information that is natural and the result of either a lack of or overwhelming amount of information. It's not typically actually the definition used. I quite like this definition, almost. The typical definition, so the word bias that you're familiar with is when you have a preference for a side or a conclusion, and the reason for your preference is not a reason for your conclusion. So what that means is if you say that a football team is the best football team and you are from there, you may be biased in that you are saying that it is the best football team for the reason that you have this preference is that you are from there, and that reason of being from there actually doesn't factor into their quality or their worth or their value as a football team. So that's the way we most often use bias in the general public. It's when the reason for your preference does not justify your conclusion about that thing you prefer. I phrased it more elegantly in the past, but I'm still nervous. But there's another thing. So that's how we use bias. Typically, that's not what we in the critical thinking community really talk about, actually. That's not, people can easily be aware of those. You know, anytime you like a person or a thing that shares some unrelated quality with you, and that quality explains the preference, but can't explain the support of the thing, then we quickly will dismiss the person, and we will freely admit that we may be biased. Freely, in most low stakes situations. But there's something even more interesting, another kind of bias, which is the cognitive bias, which is basically, and this is what we're going to talk about what this means, but it's usually defined in my community or in the sort of academic or intellectual elite community or whatever. It's typically defined as a thing that causes a deviation in your thinking from reason. It assumes a default state of human reason. So I'm thinking about something, I'm being reasonable, and then, oh no, I've been influenced by a bias, which has made me make this mistake, and has driven me away from the correct conclusion. So influence, deviation, those are commonly used words. So that's what it says on Wikipedia. It talks about being a deviation or a distortion or something. Um, um, so, damn it. So if you, at the end of this presentation, if you fully understand everything that I've said, um, I hope you'll see that I'm not cheating in what I'm about to do right now. I'm not using a fallacy or a bias or cheating, or at least I don't think so. When I'm supposed to be using this definition on this slide, but I don't want to, because I can't actually attack this definition in the way that I want to at this point in the presentation. But I'll just say for now, for the record, misprocessing information is for me a good definition of a bias. Shit, we'll see. And then the result of either a lack or of overwhelming amount of information, no. But again, the real thing that I want to attack is this idea of influence. And so now you're going to go on a whole journey with me, an intellectual journey. So, okay, I hope so. And I hope you really come with me, because the actual person I made this presentation for did not want to go with me. And so wasn't really understanding, I think. Okay, here we go. Shit, let's do it. Okay, here, hang on. Can we, oh shit, is this gonna mess it up? Hold on. Hold on a second. So I have to, I really wasn't ready to do this live. Okay, so video capture device. No, I want to add a macOS screen capture, and I want it to be a window capture. and I want it to be show full screen and hidden windows. And I want it to be, what? God damn, I'm so sorry, guys. How do I just show Safari? Okay, oh, application capture. Okay, great. Applications, oops, application Safari. The other part of Safari, god damn it. No! Okay, we can figure this out. We're not gonna panic. Why don't you guys go make coffee? Show full screen. Okay, I don't actually want that. Here we go. Okay, so now we have lots of options for Safari. So we want Safari YouTube. Great, awesome. Okay, great. So Skeptic Camp, Francis Lawrence. All right. Okay. I don't know what the audio. Oh, you won't be able to hear anything. Oh, I also have the audio off. You won't be able to hear anything. No, this isn't the right one. Okay, so God, I hope nobody's watching this. I should be able to see who's watching this, but I have no idea how to do that. Let's do another macOS screen capture. Okay. And this time we're going to go to window capture and we're going to show full screen and hidden. Not notification center. Okay. I'm going to remove that. Oh God. My girlfriend asked me, why do you want to do it live? I think it, whatever. Just assume. Properties. Okay, we're getting really, really close. Safari. Thanks for hanging out with me on my birthday, though. Focus proxy. Nope. Safari. Menu bar. Nope. Okay, whatever. So we just exit full screen. Not a big deal. So anyway, so look at this. Oh, I was so nervous. Oh, I don't actually need you to see that. All right, here we go. Oh, great. That's all I wanted to show you. Okay, we don't regret that. All right, so that's 2015. And what's happening is I am explaining what I think is a brilliant model of the mind. I now know that it was completely wrong, but I think that you can understand it, and I think that it will reflect sort of an understanding of the mind that you can accept. And then I'm going to do something crazy and revolutionary, and it's going to be great. Okay, so we're familiar with Freud. So Freud has these three sort of levels of the mind or entities of the mind. We have this lower primitive instinct that he calls the id. We have the self, which he calls the ego. So that's your perspective. That's your main thing. And then he has the super ego, which is this oversight, this moral, this super consciousness, the voice of conscience, things like that. Anyway, that's how I understand it. I don't really know anything about Freud, but I did borrow his id and ego. And so I had this model, bid, ego, sid. We're not going to talk about sid. All you need to know is right there. The bid is my sister here. Oops, there she is. the dog here, happy to be helping. Um, and I am the ego, the self, and then next to me is the Sid. But again, the Sid doesn't matter right now. Okay, so are the bid, the ego, the Sid? So we talked about cognitive biases are these things that may influence our thinking. Daniel Kahneman, who is, I think, the most important person in psychology uh, for me, he talks about system one and system two in the mind. We might be able to compare system one to like the unconscious, your automatic instincts, your gut feelings, and maybe your cognitive biases, And then system two, we might be able to compare to the self, the more reflective, the more reasonable, etc. So system one is this really quick processing thing. And the brain evolves, of course, to answer questions as quickly as possible, to come up with solutions, reactions as quickly as possible, to quickly judge an enormous amount of information. Of course, it doesn't process all of it. It just chooses certain things, and then it, as quickly as possible, draws a judgment, a conclusion, finds an answer based on those things. And so that's sort of how we think of system one, which is comparable to this bid that in my bid ego Sid model. I think this is going well. And then system one in the book Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, based on his work with Tversky and another Israeli psychologist, breaks it down into these two systems. Think the slow system, which is the system two, the sort of reasoning reflective system, and then the system one, this quick, automatic, instinctive thing. And so basically the idea is system one can come up with an answer, and then system two needs to sort of take a look at that answer and evaluate. It takes the time to evaluate, okay? We can't always depend on system two. Not possible. We did not evolve that way because we can't be sort of deliberating about every situation across which we come. We cannot, particularly, for instance, people, we cannot study them, evaluate them, consider their behavior, focus on all of that before we decide whether this person's trustworthy, whether we're going to let this person approach us, etc. So that's going to be a system one, quick analysis, and we're gonna get much more in depth about that later. So system one's going to have this quick analysis, and then the idea might be that then system two, since we aren't often in situations with like where there's going to be a physical assault in most people's everyday lives, so system two can take the time, sort of maybe evaluate the person if you engage that. And so that was my point in this presentation. I could just be playing this. That was my point in this. Oh, does it not want to do that? All right. So is it playing only when I'm on it? Yes. Okay. So that was my point in this presentation, is that the system one is kind of like a dog, and it's going to have this immediate big reaction to things. It's not going to be particularly good at evaluating the evidence, not like a human is, and so you need to be the master of the dog rather than the dog being your master. And what I mean by that is if your dog starts barking at someone, you don't just go, oh, okay, this person's definitely bad. Some people, mind you, do. They really do. They think that dogs are these all-knowing, incredibly intuitive beings, right? And so these are the people that love intuition. And that's another word for system one, the bid. So let's say that you, ego, and your dog approach someone. So system one, bid, the dog, has this reaction, and then you need to take the time to evaluate and then say, oh, hey, bid, actually, you're just barking like that because it's a big, strong man, but I'm actually but this person's actually okay. You're just barking like that because he was sort of running towards us, but actually it's just a jogger, so chill out. That makes sense, right? It's the relationship between system one, the bid, and system two, the ego, the human who says, who is supposed to be the master. And my whole point in this presentation was that unfortunately we don't do that. Instead, what we do, I should have brought water. Instead, what we do is we use all these awesome faculties of system two to just justify whatever system one says. So we have this really quick answer to something, and then we say, oh, okay, and then come up with, we think of whatever statistics might be relevant, or we use some fancy words in order to justify just our instinct. Here's an example of that. So in 2005, there was an experiment done in which subjects were shown two images. These are two candidates that had competed against each other in a political race in the United States, maybe for senator, governor, whatever, it doesn't matter. And of course, if the subjects knew the candidates and the result of the race, those data were disqualified. And so you're presented these two pictures. So imagine you're looking at two men's faces, typically, and you have to say which face looks more competent. And that's it. I'd say that's the only instruction you're given. Actually, I do sometimes when I talk about this experiment, there is a detail I get wrong because I actually finally read the article after years of talking about this experiment from having read about it in books. So forgive me, but I think I get the important thing. Yeah. And you have less than a second, I think, maybe 250 milliseconds, or maybe that's the whole free will thing. You get a very short period of time to say which of these faces looks more competent to you. And I know I was getting the statistics wrong. Let's say, to be safe, 65% of the time, the face that was selected as appearing more competent among the two unknown faces by the subject was the face of the winner of that election, right? Now, of course, if we were reasonable voters, we would assume that it would be unrelated, so like 50%. But no, it was statistically important, the relationship. And if that's not convincing to you, if you needed it to be like 90%, I mean, but right, so 65 around percent. I know that 64% was one of the percentage, but I think 68 was the other. I don't know. And now, maybe you agree with me. Of course, you know that. I mean, especially everybody who disagrees with you is not a reasonable voter. I know that you think that. And so but you don't really understand why. Why do they make the wrong decision? And what if I told you that some of those times it's because of more pronounced, which is indicative of higher testosterone levels, facial features, which the brain is sort of programmed to associate with leadership potential. Of course, nobody ever says, "Oh, hey, yeah, his face." So they're completely unaware of it, right? Anybody who is voting for this person and is influenced, I don't like that word, we're going to talk about it, by their face, they're of course not going to say that. So instead, when System 1 says, that one's better, because I associate its faces with more, with a better leader, I associate its facial features. When System 1 says that, then System 2 comes in and uses words like policies and whatever. Oh, I'm sorry about the wind. Every candidate that could ever make it onto the ballot can be justified if you're unreasonable, which we all are. So system 2 is very good at coming up with justifications that will be bought by other people, particularly peers. Of course, if people disagree, then no matter what they say. Anyway, what if I told you that the average height of CEOs is in feet is I think it's like 6'1" or maybe 6 feet, and then whereas the average height for men is 5'9.5", and that's so that we're talking about 182 centimeters or something. I think it may be 6'1". I don't know. Nobody ever has explained their candidate choice by height. So system 1 said, hey, that's the better candidate. And then system 2 came up with reasons why that was the better candidate. So there you go, a whole bunch of words for this bid thing. And then we have ego, the conscious agent, the self, the soul, reason, rationality, thinking clearly, system 2, etc. So as I've sort of said, how long have I been going, by the way? Oh, fuck. So as I sort of said, when your system 1 makes this snap judgment, uses a heuristic, which is called a shortcut, which is a word for a shortcut. When it makes these snap judgments, it's up to system 2 to engage and say, hold on, that may be a bias, that may be an error. The halo effect. We tend to, if someone okay, we should be back. So halo effect. So if somebody is good in one domain, maybe they're smart, maybe they are attractive, maybe they're nice, whatever. We tend to think that they are good in other ways. It's not that we literally think it in the sense that we say, "Oh, you must be smart. You're beautiful." No. And if I had already explained my whole thing, it would be very easy to explain what's actually happening, and that's why I had to invent a whole bunch of words actually. But so we will tend to rate that person though as higher in other ways. So for instance, you are asked to rate the intelligence of two people based on images. We tend to rate the intelligence of sorry, not at the same time. We tend to rate the intelligence of someone attractive higher than we rate the unattractive person. Now, if we were looking at them together, we might put the same. But it's just you show this person 10 attractive people that are, and then this person, and or all these people 10 ugly people, all these people 10 attractive people, and their ratings. Okay, you follow me? Hopefully you do. And so that's called the halo effect. So when that happens, when system 1 says, "Oh hey, this guy's smart," yeah. Then the idea that system 2 says, whoa, that might be the halo effect, bro. I'm going to step in and be reasonable now. And now we've arrived at the crux of it. What does that mean? So like I've got like these offices in my brain for these quick, fast judgments. God damn it. And then where's the mic? And then, so then we get the memo from them and we go, oh, okay, cool. Now we're going to engage. You guys be quiet. I realize there's this huge problem in my whole model, which is that what is this relationship between me and my dog? This ability for me to hear when it's me being reasonable and or when it's my dog being a dumb dog and barking. How am I supposed to internally hear that difference? So I realized something kind of crazy. Um, oh, so now we're supposed to talk about this first. Okay, so the dangers of this this system one, system two, or this conscious unconscious, or this biases are influencing me, and but I exist as my own, and they are external to me. Um, one biggest problem is the illusion of control. So now you think, okay, I'm going to stop being biased now. Hey, think reasonably, think clearly. You know, oh my gosh, you're such a fool. You just made that cognitive bias error. You just deviated from your rational state. You lost control for a second. But we can have control, and anybody smart maintains it at all times. Illusion of awareness, knowing which of the things that you say are bullshit barking and which of them are these quote unquote reasonable things. Then there's a lack of humility. Oh no, I don't make mistakes. My dog does. So if I really believe something, like it wasn't because my dog was barking. Like that may have been why I was like on alert at first when I saw the person coming, but then I engaged and thought about the thing, and I am reasonable. Um, so atteint par means like not affected by or not. You can be atteint par a disease. And so then so then because I am a reasonable human being, I don't need to revise anything. I could maybe work on my instincts. I could make sure he barks less loudly. Um, but I am reasonable, so no need to change. Um, and then other people who believe in these crazy things, um, they have like broken brains, or they know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to hurt other people and whatever. Um, do I want to explain that more? Uh, And then there's also this idea that other people, they let their dogs run the show. I'm reasonable. They're biased. They're not thinking clearly. Um, and then if they are thinking clearly, then they must be really, really dumb or evil. This whole idea of the soul, of the ego, of this controlling self has bothered me for years. I'm trying to minimize the wind. This is very frustrating. Um, because I don't want to have to do this presentation again. Anyway, because as you can see, I have ADHD. And so I've always had issues in school with either other students or the professors not understanding how I might value the class, value the work, want to have a degree, and so on, and then just not do the homework, or just not come to class, or just not study. How could there be that disconnect? So that disconnect actually really gave me an advantage in being able to figure out these things that I have about the mind. Um, People would always say, like, if you wanted to, you would. Most people, when they were trying to be helpful, and ADHD people are probably very familiar with this, whenever we explain how we have trouble getting something done, doing things, they say, oh, well, you just, neurotypical people, they say, oh, you just got to find something you're interested in. It's like, shut the fuck up. You don't know me, bro. Because I'm interested in this, and I wish I was reading every day, or I wish I was writing every day, and so on. But I'm not. Um, and so we tend to assume, gosh, it's so hard to, because again, if I want to talk about integration right now, Just remember, please, that if you know anything about the depressive experience, or if you've seen anything on social media, obviously there's some frustration in the neurodivergent community about how neurotypicals like think that if you want to do something or if you know how to do something, then you can do something, and we're like, no, that's not always the case. But we're gonna get into all of that. And thanks for hanging out with me on my birthday. Really, this is so nice of you. And you're rewarded, because now I'm going to, if you've been following me and if you trust me at all and if you listen to me, I'm about to blow your mind. I'm not, because it's never gone that way. I don't know what it is. And because maybe I'm completely wrong about everything, but the ego doesn't exist. You do not exist. I don't exist. There is not an entity that is saying, a single entity that is saying all of these words. Like one entity said a word, another entity said a word, another entity said a word. And it's just so obvious. I hate that it's so hard to get people to sort of believe me on this, because, I mean, just look at, it's 2020, for the first time I'm saying 2023, like that should, like we're in the future. Usually I say it's only 2023, but for a couple hundred years now, maybe longer in some cultures and in some periods or farther back, we've understood that the brain is what you are, and the brain is not a single thing. It is composed of 100 billion neurons and 10 times as many glial cells. Glial cells are just these support cells, but we think may play more of a role than no role in cognition. Cognition just meaning thinking, basically. As I think now, it is not a single entity moving from topic to topic or idea to idea or image to idea or image to image. It's an image. And even as an observer, there is not a single observer. I react differently to different things in different moments, and sometimes I have multiple reactions to the same thing, but then sort of one wins out. You don't exist. You are sort of, imagine that you think of yourself as a forest, this single thing, this forest. Most of the time when we talk about you or I, what we're talking about is like a low res or like a Polaroid. Like a Polaroid of this forest, which, as you of course know, is not a single thing, but has all of these different parts. Many of them are competing with each other. Many of them have different prerogatives. Well, I guess that's redundant, but they have different qualities and so on. And so if I say I know someone, for instance, what I have in my possession maybe are just a couple Polaroids of this entire massive thing. I do not know exactly sort of how that tree works. I don't know how that tree works. I don't know the relationships between these really. I just get glimpses of behavior, the result of the interactions of all of these pieces. So who am I? I am a body with the name of Eris. I am a history. You might say that I'm a set of memories, but it's easy for memories to go away. And I am the sum of my parts, of the activity of my parts in their moments. So there is a me now, there is a me yesterday, there is a me from 3 weeks ago to now. If you take the average of sort of the activity of the parts that were active. And this is the most important thing in the world. How do I avoid overselling it, but get you to hear me? This changes everything, and I know this uh, because when I have conversations with people, like everything they say seems wrong to me. And it's because of all these, the foundation of like the way that we think about things, talk about things, feel about things. It's all based on the idea that we are a single, comma, integrated entity, but we are not. And if you understand what I'm saying, if you follow me along in this presentation, you'll see that that gives us a great deal of hope. It also takes a lot of pressure off. And it lets us be humble. Shit, I was going to say something really good, important. That was two different voices. Oh, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But that was two different. It also it's going to explain so much if you really apply it. But I've never really gotten anyone to apply it. So the ego doesn't exist, and the dog is not a single entity. So if you want, replace the image that I'd given you earlier with these two here. You can place a whole pack of dogs if you want. No, that's not useful. I already have some good metaphors. Um, do you have the humility though to accept that like you don't exist, that you are just the sum of your instincts? You are just the sum of your instincts, including your biases. Okay, so hopefully this presentation in a good order. I'm excited. This is exciting. This is a great birthday. Oh, that's the wrong window. Okay, oops. Self does not exist. The self is instead a messy ensemble of interactions, of rules, coding, and sync thoughts. There's so many different words we can use. So we can call them voices. I want to start calling them psies. In the French pronounce the P in psychology, or for like the word for their therapist or psychologist is mon psy, le psy. And but it's so annoying for me to pronounce it psi, and I don't want to call it psi. We'll see what we do. Psies. In this video, I'm definitely going to call them voices. Should I? No, let's go back into that. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Okay. So what does this mean? So if the ego doesn't exist, so at first I was calling it the ego myth. Then I started calling it now I call it the judge myth. At some point I'm going to have to go get water. Do you guys want to do a quick bathroom break? Okay, let's go get water. Okay, I'm back. If you can hear me from the bathroom. Okay. Oh, I can't believe I'm literally saving your lives. I don't know what I'm. Okay, anyway. All right, so. Okay, so. Okay. I'm not going to change the slide. Our eyes can be closed. I mean, your eyes as well. Imagine a courtroom. And imagine that the people in the audience, I don't know whether you have to imagine like an old timey courtroom or something, or I don't know whether it's ever like that, but imagine that the people in the audience of the courtroom, you know, they're kind of shouting things out during the trial. So you've got, let's say, two lawyers, if you want, and you've got the judge. Yes. See, throughout history, can you see me? No, not really. Throughout history, our concept of self has always been between, I think, one and three things in cultures with which I'm familiar. So sometimes we have a monkey on our back. Sometimes we have a demon. Sometimes we have a conscience, in which case we're two things. We are the self and then the conscience, just like with the monkey on our back. Sometimes we are two wolves competing. Sometimes we are three things, like with Freud, we have this unconscious, conscious, and this super conscious. Sometimes we're just one thing, right? Just the soul. Sometimes we're two things, system one, system two. In my original model, we are the bid, the ego, and the sid, three things. I feel like I'm missing some major classifications, but anyway, the point is there tends to, most of the time that sometimes there's like the mind, the heart, and the soul, and the body. Okay, so if you want four sometimes, but a lot of people talk about the relationship between their emotional self and their rational self, their heart and their mind. In which case, maybe we are two things, or maybe there's this third thing, and they are each on our shoulder. So yeah, two to three, maybe sometimes just one thing. That's how we see ourselves. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We're going to try to change that. So the way we typically imagine it is, I am a judge. I'm sitting there. Maybe I've got these two lawyers, right? They're on my shoulder. They're arguing their cases. You should do this. You should do that. And then I'm going to be reasonable and try not to be too influenced by one of them if they're bad or something. So let's start with how you imagine it. Okay, judge, two lawyers arguing, heart and mind, emotion, rationality, good, bad, wolf, whatever, and a silent audience. Okay. But what about these biases that influence us? Well, we had different names for the biases. So maybe it wouldn't be useful to imagine one of the lawyers like having Tourette's and like shouting out these biased thoughts or these biases. So let's imagine now that the audience is shouting things out, and we can often imagine the audience as being, the common people and the pathetic, stupid public or whatever, right? So we can very easily imagine like a town hall meeting, basically, where it's a whole bunch of people just like they all have different motivations, information, beliefs, whatever, and they're just like shouting, okay? And then there you are, the judge among the chaos. But you have final word. You hear what they have to say, you consider, you consider, you consider. And sometimes you get carried away in the heat of the moment. You think with your blank, or you think with too much with your heart. You see red, whatever. And so they start scribbling decisions. But then you come to your senses. You come back to reason. In French, we say come back to reason. Um, and okay, well, sorry, I was a little bit out of it, but now it's me again. Now I'm reasonable. I'm no longer drunk. I'm no longer emotional, whatever. It's me writing the decisions. And basically, what I've said to you is that this judge does not exist. Is that basically what the mind is it's kind of like Inside Out, and that was 5 things. But it's a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of different instincts and judgments competing. Um, and now I should talk about evolution. Oops. Okay. Gosh, already an hour. Okay, that's all right. An hour to tell you, like, give you the biggest news in the world. That's all right. Now I just have to explain it and tell you the implications. Not ideal, but I think I have to take a break because I got to change gears here. As I talk about evolution, it will explain why what I'm saying is true, and it will tell us more about what I am saying. All right, give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm coming back. So, evolution. What is evolution? So, evolution is basically biological evolution, just how we came to be, right? So, uh, originally they were very, very simple organisms, uh, many of which still exist. Um, well, if I say originally, maybe I just have to talk about the one. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so so we had these organisms, and then they became more and more complicated, and eventually, they even developed uh, these sort of thinking systems. It started with just light processing, as I understand. I think that's the oldest sort of cognitive system, which is just a thing's ability to respond to the variations in light, to go towards or away from. And so with the simplest robots, their coding is very simple. I mean, it's not very simple, but you know what I mean. It's very simple in the sense that it is if this many lumens are perceived, however the processor works, then advance. And then so now you have a robot that has the behavior of being able to go towards the light. You have an organism that can go towards the light, and then, or whatever. It can go towards the darkness. A lot of things like to hide in the darkness, so they can avoid the light. And then that got sort of more and more intricate and complicated. There were more and more lines of programming added, according to the pressures of natural selection and sexual selection and so on. Natural selection is basically just, if perchance my neck is a little bit longer than everybody else, I have a better chance of survival because I can get fruits and stuff that they can't reach. Which means I'm more likely to have kids, which means it's more likely that this gene will exist in another generation. And by conferring that survival advantage, I really want this to be accessible to everybody. That gene propagates. Not spatially, but in time, as that thing is more able to provide for its offspring and so on. There are more offspring, healthier offspring that then go on to pass on the gene, and then before you know it, you got a species with long necks. So that was because they needed to. It was advantageous. They were able to reach the higher fruits. So when something is advantageous, and it was originally just a bug in the programming, but it actually made the system better. Is it okay that I'm like switching between software and biology and all that? For me, it feels seamless. I hope it's okay. As we're doing that, no. As that's happening, you've got these more lines of code. Oh, so if this, then this. If it has dots, don't eat it. If it is red, it is ripe. I don't know. Whatever. If it is coming towards you very quickly, be on alert. If it is, whatever. All these different rules that we evolved with in order to respond, not in order to. All these different things that we evolved with that helped us best respond to our environment. So we talked about some of the rules that NEO has, which is a rule that a lot of organisms have. Something is coming fast at you, react. And then he's got stuff that we don't have, stuff about certain smells, a lot of coding about different smells that we don't have diversified reactions to. Gosh, I really am taking my sweet time. Sorry. So, here's the important part. All this is important. Let me emphasize this. Energy efficiency is always prioritized in evolution. A system that uses a lot of energy better be necessary. Otherwise, it probably will not be something that will be naturally selected because we needed to conserve energy. We did not have the steady access to calories that we do now. So all systems needed to be as efficient as possible. Okay. So you couldn't. But if we were to imagine a reasonable system, no. So for instance, we talked earlier about how we can't always rely on system 2. It can't always be active, this sort of mythical system 2. And that's because we can't constantly be deliberating. We cannot constantly be processing all the information that is in the visual spectrum, in our visual field, I mean. And no part of the brain, not even system 1 can do that. So system 1 is going to prioritize changes, stuff like that. It's going to feed it to system 2, and system 2 is only going to process a little bit of that, and it's only like if it's necessary. Oh, do I need to analyze this? Do I need to evaluate this? Okay, let me activate system 2. It's bullshit, but so more intense cognitive processes, that's not bullshit, that of course really exists. That's what I'm trying to get you to do with me today. These more intense cognitive processes require the activation of more neurons, more communication in the brain, and so on, which requires more calories, which is not ideal. So we prefer simpler, less calorie requiring processes. Okay. So let's talk about the in-group. Let's stay on the halo effect first. So the halo effect, for instance. Rather than evaluating the person on all these different levels, if the person is handsome, then this person I'm not thinking any of this, okay? But I've been programmed with this rule for the reason I'm about to say. This is why evolution liked this simple line of coding. The simple line of coding is if the person is attractive, the person is intelligent. That simple line of coding was just a bug at first, but it stayed because it tended to be that if you're attractive, then you have these good competitive genes. You had your pick of them, and you chose someone else, and you probably had high standards for what their genes would be. Their genes were probably intelligent, so it's this association of good genes, basically. And the brain is so simple; it likes to keep things really simple. So basically, if it can say thumbs up in one area, to save time, to save energy, sort of copies and pastes that thumbs up elsewhere. Or rather, you could say that when I'm asked, is this person smart, I just see, is there a thumbs up? I'm not going to use the energy or time to figure out, now, was this a thumbs up about this quality of the person and all that? It's much better to just say, okay, yeah, probably. Because most of the time, that worked well enough as a judgment. Let me give you another example. There are two kinds of errors that you can make, type 1 and type 2 something errors. So let's say I see a bush in the background. I'm with my buddies. We're on a hunt. Okay, because you've sat with me so long, I'll act it out for you. Can you see me? Which way do I need to go? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, God. All right, hold on. Thank you, buddy. Okay, so I'm on a hunt. Okay. Oh, can you see that bush right there? Yeah. So that bush moves. That bush. Oh no, you cannot see the bush. Okay. So the bush moves. All right. Imagine that we are these system 2 deliberate thinkers that you like to imagine. We go, okay. So let's see, what kind of sort of object do I see behind that? Maybe if I grab another angle, what's the likelihood that this would be a prey versus a predator? I got to bring something back to my family. We've been going for 2 hours now. We haven't found anything, so it could be a prey. And if it is a prey, that would be great. Of course, the thing is, isn't this whole area here is actually the area where there are a lot of those lions? So it could be a. Can I get up? Let me get up. Let me get up. Let me get. No, stop it. Stop it. No, do not. I'm live streaming. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. So I spent all that time deliberating. And so, then what happened? I got eaten, right? Okay. So let's say that we're not going to deliberate. Let's say we're just going to have a sort of a thing that we do. There are two sort of ways that we can be wrong in this situation besides taking the time to deliberate. One way, it'd be cool if you could see the bush. Okay, one way is that we can assume that it is a prey, therefore that it is not harmful, and indeed it is harmful. So we assume it is not, but it is. And we are, let's say, no. And so we are wrong. Okay, we assume that it is not harmful, but it is, we're wrong. That's a very bad, would you stop it? That's a very bad mistake to make, okay? What's the other option? The other option is we assume, can you actually, oh, you can. We assume that it is a predator, we assume that it is harmful, and it is not. We assume that it is, but it is not. So that's a different kind of mistake that we can make. What about that mistake? What do you guys think about that? So then maybe you miss out on getting lunch then, but you avoid being lunch. So if we are around right now, it must mean that our ancestors had a system that preferred the error of thinking it did exist, even though it didn't, or this error of presuming bad intention. And we are their descendants. So of course we have that line of code as well. We have that voice. The in-group, out-group bias. We have a preference for those who are part of our in-group. It is an automatic preference. It is not, racism is not something that is taught. You can teach people that a certain group is this way or that way, but we will always have the brain structures, the voices, to think negatively or to accord less of the benefit of the doubt, less leniency to people of the out-group than of the in-group. Why? Are you stupid? No, I shouldn't get frustrated. I'm just joking. Evolution. We are the descendants of people that collaborated with their tribesmen and were wary of other tribes, other species, of the other. Everybody has this line of code. Everybody has this voice. I don't know how to say that any more clearly. People don't get it. I volunteered for a group that was helping with refugees in France and Paris. We would hand out meals, and there was this big dramatic problem because this group, I think, was racist in something that they did. And one thing that I tried to communicate to them is that I too am racist, that we are all racist, that we all judge things differently. So if we have to judge a member of the in-group and we have to judge a member of the out-group, I promise you we will be more ready to punish the member of the out-group than we are of the member of the in-group. This situation happened. Two people were accused of something a few months apart. One took a leadership role. The other was kicked out 10 minutes upon showing his face after they had received the accusation, even though the accuser, who was not the victim, had said, actually, don't do anything. They talked about it. The person who took on a leadership role after these things came to light, they were like, oh, what does the victim want us to do, blah, 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 blah. And they would not believe me. I know you believe me about them, but I need you to believe it about yourself. I believe it about myself. I know that if I have to evaluate these two situations, I'm going to give more trust to the perpetrators of the in-group. I am going to feel less alarmed, less on alert by the transgression of the in-group member, even though in this case it was worse. I want you to be the second person in the world. Okay, I'm not the only person in the world, but to know that you are racist, that you have a preference for the in-group, and then what we can do is try to compensate for that. But there's no, oh, okay, so now I know I have that, so now I'm going to think without that. No, that is one of the lines in your program that is executed as your behavior is executed, as your thoughts are executed. It is a voter in sort of your mind congress. And there's nothing you can do about it in the vote being cast. I am colored. I am very well aware of how these things work. I promise that I catch myself judging black people differently from white people, for instance. Because for me, the sort of middle class white American is sort of the in group in some ways. And then the other is defined accordingly. I promise. I don't, because I have a voice that I think is trying to imitate your voice there, that is listening to what I'm saying, and I don't feel like I've really gotten it across yet. Okay, so we had these rules, and there are these things that are reliable enough to give us a survival advantage without costing us too much energy. You know, if you tend to prefer your in-group than your out-group, okay, you have a better chance of survival. I mean, it's in our ancestors. And so basically, these lines of code imitate, or are meant to imitate, a reasonably survivalist system. Okay. What I mean by that is that, so to ask the question, what would it be reasonable to do? We're asking the question, what is the best thing to sort of guarantee your survival? Because the brain isn't going to consider each situation, we have certain rules that are meant to get us to the right answer enough of the time. Should I give more examples? Like, for instance, there's the ball and the bat experiment. Very, very simple. A ball and a bat cost 10 cents. No, shit. A ball and a bat together cost $1.10. The bat is $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball? I think I fucked it up. Anyway, I've said $1.10, $1. Your system one went and quickly did that math. $1.10 minus $1. Okay, we're looking at a 10-cent ball, $1 bat. Because typically, if someone gives me like a total and then like a value or something, then there's like subtraction, and I get to this thing that usually works. And of course, if you've never heard this experiment, then you might be still thinking, "Yep, that sounds right." But no. If the ball is 10 cents and the bat is $1 more, then it's $1.10. That with the ball makes it $1.20. So instead, it has to be $91.05. So 5 cents has to be 5 cents. And the trick was that in the actual problem, I didn't say that the bat costs $1. I said that it costs $1 more than the ball. And so there's probably a voice in your head that goes, okay, bat costs $1. 110, ball is 10 cents. And then there's probably another simultaneous voice that interpreted that as the bat cost $1 more. Um, and then there's this $1.10 somewhere. Therefore, the ball cost 10 cents. And then, but that voice is not considering what the goal price is. It's not going, oh, hey, remember, it has to add up to 110 actually. And we're about to add up to 120. It doesn't consider that. All it is $1.10, $1.10. Boom, done. Okay. So these rules are in place to try to imitate reason, and they often fail. And this is an example of them failing. A lot of the times it succeeds. I wouldn't say most of the time. Usually we justify, we have this confirmation bias, we think that our instinct was right, or maybe we had two instincts and one of them was right, and we're like, oh, I knew it, hindsight bias. That's called hindsight bias. But in any case, our instincts, these simple sort of rules that are meant to quickly get us to what tends to be sort of the right answer, is something good enough. They enough for us to exist, not enough for us to be able to get along and not to be constantly at war, not enough for us to not destroy our planet, but enough for us to stuff our faces and have create iPhones and have internet and all of this here and these ideas. Well, me anyway. I've never been able to transmit them. I'm so special. So it's really kind of easy to predict or speculate what voices we might have. It's those things that would have helped us evolve. So it's really easy to understand our voices regarding beauty, whatever hip to waist ratio, or women's preference for strong arms, or the females, the women's preference for success and aptitude or competence versus the male's preference for appearance in general. That exists as a voice in all of us, even if we want to say, oh, no, our cultural ideals contradict that. Therefore, no, that's not me. No, that is one of your lines of code. That is one of your voices, to have this preference for the attractiveness if you're a man, or for the competence if you're a woman. Well, of course, our brains are different, so there are deviations. But on average, for most people, but then you may have, by society, installed another voice that has a distaste for that voice, and so there's some interaction there, which is what produces your judgment and preferences. But it's not that new voice, that society voice, that voice that, oh, that's unacceptable. It's not as strong as you think. So even a volunteer who's all about helping refugees and I don't see color and all that stuff, even he also has activity, that voice that determines how they judge a situation. Not influences how they judge a situation, but determines. And so basically what we realize is, have you heard of God of the Gaps? God of the Gaps is this idea that before, historically, there's been for a lot of time, we've believed in a God. And then the more that we start to understand about the causes of the world, the less we attributed those events to this thing that we called God. So the origin of the species now, for many, we can attribute to evolution. But then they will maintain a faith in God as being the origin of the universe or something, because Big Bang, inflation, all that stuff. And so science explains more and more, reducing the things left unexplained, for which we need to use God. today we're talking about reason of the gaps. Before it was that humans are just reasonable. Then we started talking about an id and the brain and biases and so on and so. But we maintain this idea that at the core of it, we are these reasonable souls, or the soul of the gaps. People will say, oh yeah, depression is real, so chemical imbalance, network problems, whatever, can cause a thing in behavior, can influence how you feel. But at the core of it, those things that we haven't yet explained by neurotransmitters and by biology, that's where the soul exists. So the brain doesn't tend to just get rid of an idea. It tends to just let itself have these contradictions. You've got this one voice that's saying the soul exists, then this other voice that just overwrote part of it that's saying, okay, yeah, totally. Depression, though, does respond to Prozac. But like your perspective on that, what you do with that information, that can like be the soul. But yeah, there is like a serotonin like thing that exists and like influences or affects us, whatever. But let's stop being children. Stop. Uh, Stop with the gaps. There's no need for the God of the gaps. We have things that we have explained, and we might be wrong about some of those. And we have things that we're working on, or questions we don't even know yet. But yeah, so it's just look at that knowledge growing, okay? And just because we can't point at where it's happening in the brain doesn't mean we don't have enough evidence to say you are your brain. There is no soul. Just all these neurons firing. Okay, Finest Gage. You can Google him. Phineas. Maybe I'm not spelling that correctly. Last name, nom de famille, Gage. G G A G G A G G A G E. And this reason of the gaps, you don't need that either. We are actually just these simple rules, these biases, these things that we call biases. Now, we can call them biases when they are rules that are not well adapted to the situation or even to our environment in general, things that were only useful 10,000 years ago, or even, a million years ago for another species, but we just never needed to evolve out of it or change it. Reason, there was never a reason for us to evolve reason. Agriculture has existed for about 12,000 years, right? Language, what is that at? I have no idea. But like more than 6,000 years ago, less than like 50,000 years ago? Yeah, I think less than 10,000 years ago. Is that right? I don't know. But anyway, the point is, not a lot of time evolutionarily speaking. And agriculture and language are absolutely necessary to have any environment that is going to need you to be reasonable, to be able to consider things beyond just like go left, go right, eat, don't eat, attack, don't attack, whatever. And it's been only extremely recently that there's things like books and academia and so on. We are not these rational processing machines that we think we are. That there was no survival advantage to it. But we just have a whole lot of these different rules, all meant to sort of imitate reason in order to survive. So we don't need to consider political issues in order to survive. We never really have. So we didn't need even things that would imitate that. But we need to choose leaders. For a long time, we've needed to choose leaders. So we have a rule for, okay, tall, pronounced facial features, good hunter probably, whatever. But the nuances of things, we have never really needed to do that. So we don't have the instincts for it. I'm sorry, I'm running out of, well, thanks for hanging out with me. Let's see what we can do next. Let's see what else there is. Okay, so there's the vocabulary. Oh yeah. And then there's the integration myth. All right, let's do the integration myth. So, because that's a huge corollary of everything that we talked about. Gosh, I'm running out of steam. All right, so damn it. So, we imagine ourselves as a single entity. Now, the single entity can have, in some senses, parts, but they're all coherent and working together, which is why it's a single whole. So if you know something, if you want something, so your knowledge, your values, your desires, your behavior, they should all be coherent. Like you wouldn't do that knowing that. That we often react to people, how could you do that if you knew that? Or if you did that, then you must think this, or you must need this, or you must blah, blah. So somebody who talks a lot, for instance, we say they must need attention. So they had this objective of, I need people to look at me. And so then they started talking. It's possible that that need doesn't really exist. It's possible there's just a voice that says, share, 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 share. Um, it's also possible, and this is true in a lot of people, in a lot of cases, that in fact the person doesn't want attention. There is a voice saying, like, hide, I am anxious about people and how they judge me and so on. But then they've got this voice going, share, 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 and then they're always feeling weird about having overshared. I can relate. So what's going on? Why are they sharing if they don't necessarily even want to share? Or why do we do things when we know that it isn't good? We also tend to assume that, if somebody does something that's like bad, we tend to assume that they knew that it was bad, that they knew what the consequences of the thing would be, and that they did it for those consequences, which is a whole lot of assumptions. Sometimes we just have an automatic reaction to something. That reaction is expressed. It's not a choice whether or not it's expressed. The voice comes out. We can try to reprogram ourselves, and maybe if I have enough steam, we'll get to that. But if you haven't made that effort yet, if you haven't used what I call refute to mute and no need, no heed, no need. If you haven't used that or whatever thing you need to do in order to reprogram yourself, then yeah, you just have this reaction. And it's like, holy shit, I had no idea that would have that effect. I didn't think about it. I had no planning, whatever. But no, we tend to assume that, and that's because we tend to assume that there's this intentional man. That's because we believe in this integration. So I watched an Instagram video. This comedian, Australian Indian comedian, was saying that she said, I'm a woman of color. And so what that basically means is that weird stuff happens to me that doesn't happen to white people. For instance, in the first day in my first day at 3 different jobs as a refugee lawyer, people thought I was the refugee, not the lawyer. And so I complained about that. I was like, sorry, sorry that you got compared to low class, disgusting, primitive refugee. Um, and a whole bunch of people said to me, no, it's not that. It's that they thought that only a lawyer could only be white, and because she's not white, then she must be a refugee and not a lawyer. That's a lot to get from what the comedian said in her stand-up routine. Um, what I am. Oh, why is my mom calling? Did it stop streaming? Oh, let me know when you continue to live stream. Oh my God, I've been talking this whole time. I've been talking this whole time. Oh, I noticed that that light was red. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Oh no! I've done an hour and 30 minutes, and you said it only went up to what? Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Ah, now I'm back on. I think I'm back on now. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. You gotta be shitting me. I was just talking about how I'm running out of steam and stuff. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Can you see how many thousands of people are watching now that I'm back on? Unbelievable. If you're just tuning in now, I talked for another over 45 minutes after apparently the connection went out. Thank you for calling. Oh my God. Unbelievable. What kind of audience are we looking at? It would obviously be cool if there are two people watching right now, including you. Huh? Go. Stay on the call though. Oh my gosh. Oh no. No. This is how I know zero people who. Actually, my mom sent me messages. I wasn't looking at my messages, Ma. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. And it's funny because I just don't know whether I want to. Oh, so much stuff that you missed. Because and then also, how does this work? So, wait, why is it red again? Ah, so it's like. Oh, so it's like dropping a whole bunch of frame. I see. So there's a bunch of issues. Oh, well, I'm on a FaceTime call, so that's okay. Uh, uh, oh, now Angela's calling. No. I just need. I mean, I am live, but tell me what the quality is like, please. Oh, because this doesn't continue as a new. So I'm not live right now. Oh. All right. So here's what I need to happen. I need confirmation about whether or not I am streaming. Okay, I'm gonna click stop streaming then. I am devastated, inconsolable. Okay, so now this time I'll keep the chat window up here. I talked for over 45 minutes. I cannot repeat all of that. Do you know how exhausting it is to think at this level and to try to explain it? Because that means a translation between levels as well. And honestly, it's not even that the ideas are that smart. Everything that I'm saying is actually extremely simple and obvious, but is just not what we were programmed how we were programmed to see it. And it's really more of the fact that I'm so tired after having spoken for an hour and a half about this is more of a testament to the sort of simplicity or what the brain was made for to the energy efficiency of the brain, the habit. Can someone just, I hope this chat is telling me the YouTube chat, and if anybody's watching this, can you tell me whether I am live right now while I sip my Irish coffee? Of course, maybe just nobody's watching this. I shouldn't be wasting time just in case. It really is. It really isn't. I got extremely lucky in just all the things that you missed. Excuse me while I spit, since this doesn't seem to be going anyway. Unbelievable. And so the dropped frames are like 20%. So I mean, it's probably terrible quality as well. This is the most important presentation of our lives, of mine, of yours, of your children's. And really, it's not that I'm all that smart. It's honestly, it's just that because I have ADHD, it never quite sat right with me, the idea of the single self. And so, and then because I have ADHD, I was interested in psychology and neuroscience. And because my dad is an atheist, but like the bad kind, the one that rejects God, that believes in the absence of God. So those factors are why I thought a lot about beliefs and reason and all that, and the mind, and okay, and maybe this isn't even the YouTube chat. So maybe there are people like, okay, get to it. I saw there was like 21 views on the other thing. I don't know what that means. Is my mom refreshing, or did she have enough? Now the wind is worse. This isn't going well, and I want to thank, if there were actually like more than 3 people watching me and like thinking about this stuff with me, that's pretty awesome. Actually, 2 people was fine. My girlfriend and my mother. That's very good. Where's my dog, though? I'm sorry, guys. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try to send a message. I'm just trying to get back into it. I wasn't planning to start and dick around like this and waste your time like this, but coffee and whiskey. Oh, hi. Okay, great. And so you can see me now? Of course, I don't know what the lag is. And this. Okay, these are not real obstacles. Okay, let's just get into it. Okay, so where's the mic here? Wind is like, I don't know. Okay, so, and here's the thing about this broadcast, is that obviously I said great stuff, talked about important stuff in the other one, when after it had cut out. So I'm going to post that. But I'm not going to ask you to watch both of them. I guess I'm not asking you to watch anything. But like, what do I do, though? Do I continue for the record? For the people... Oh, you could have done that farther away. For the people who are... Because I do need you to watch it, though. Because there was the funny thing with Neo. Oh, boy. So I can try to not repeat myself. And then just, if you want to understand the world, then yeah, you're just going to have to go back and watch it, even though it isn't live. But also, obviously, I can't just pick up where I left off. So, start over, Mother says. Start over? Oh, you know what? That's not a bad idea, actually. Should I start over? Oh my gosh. I don't think I could do that. Okay. But maybe I can do it more quickly. I've been able to get through some of the ideas, do it a bit more concisely. Just the moments we had together where like I feel like I said something and we just paused together and I was like that's huge. Do you understand that? And actually we didn't have those moments together. And that hurts me. That chokes one of my voices. Okay. All right, let's start over then. Let's start over. And if you were one of my viewers, then you can just, I mean, you can just have this go in the background and check back after. Oh, fuck it. Well, there's no way I'm actually going to be able to fully do everything, but okay. So I turn off this. That's not what I wanted. Where's my, oh, I see. Okay, sorry guys. So that was lying to me. That told me that it was still updating, but no, the window is closed. Thanks for hanging out with me on my birthday. So I need to click slideshow. Great. Then I have to go back to here, and I have to be like properties. Oh right. So it's no. Oh gosh. Thanks for being with me, guys. Nope, not that one. How about that one? Not that one. How about, I should do these in order. Fuck, I'm gonna be trying the same ones. Not that one. Which Safari window is it? So many Safari items. Yeah, just leave me alone. I'm not gonna. I could just stop the live stream. I could. And then just start when I'm ready. That's not a bad idea. But honestly, I don't think I'm that far from finding it. Okay. So, okay. Okay. All right. So then what we do is we go back to this screen over here. And we're like, boom, 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 beep, 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 beep. All right, we can't literally start over, can we? Then it would just be one video for posterity. But the real ones know about the original video. I honestly, I just can't act. I have voices that are saying different things, and while I'm working on that, let me give you a new word to use instead of thinking. Threshing. Threshing. We say that we think, and I've never really understood that because I don't think I think. I don't think that whatever your concept of thinking is, I don't think that I do it. I don't think like I'm there like doing calculations. At least I'm not conscious of them. So I use the word threshing, and that's from the word threshold, because basically what's happening is like if you have to make a purchase decision, for instance, let me think it over. You know, you go home, you think about other stuff. I mean, you do other things. You see other images in your mind that may have nothing to do with the purchase decision, or they may. In any case, unconscious or not, or conscious, there is activity in your mind, voices playing with this purchase decision. There is a very cheap voice in your mind that is pretty much always saying no to all purchase decisions. There's another one that's like, oh, we can have like a new thing. That's cool. There's another one that's like, oh, we need it for this purpose. There's another one that was like the salesman was really charming. There's another one like, I don't know, all my friends have this, whether you want like it or not. All these voices are interacting, and then basically what happens is they play with each other until some kind of a threshold is reached of confidence in sort of one of the voices or one of the stances. There may be multiple voices pushing towards the same thing, and eventually you feel more voice activity, or one of the voices like triggers the confidence feeling. It's able to slip in there and go, it hits the confidence button in your brain, and so then your confidence voice is like, okay, cool. And so you've reached some threshold. It's not like necessarily a reasonable threshold because I can't go through it all. Okay, what are we gonna do? Kelly, thanks for hanging out with me on my birthday. Oh look, yeah, my mom said we can hang with you. That's nice, thank you. So, I'm cold now. I hope you had this on in the background. Fudge. Okay, still threshing, but I guess I'm starting to reach a confidence threshold, a commitment threshold, in the sort of idea of starting over. Okay, no. Obviously, we cannot do that. It's an hour and a half. Okay, so, okay, I'm done threshing. We are not going to start over. We're just going to keep talking. All right, so let's see if you're just starting with us, though. Basically, I have a theory called voice theory, which I want you to teach you in order for you to understand yourself and other people. I will say something now that I have said in the past, which is that what's crazy about humans, oh, and this is something I didn't say in the other video. What is crazy about humans is our lack of interest in psychology. Yes, okay, everybody's interested in psychology. Everybody's like, oh, like, I think psychology is so cool or whatever. But I want you to think about like any sci-fi movie that you've seen with AI. Anytime there is a computer that becomes intelligent, what's the first thing it does? It looks at its code. If you have a computer and there is a problem with it, it does something unexpected. You look at its code. If you want to understand computer behavior, you look at its code. You can use a computer without looking at its code, but you still have to know that everything that is happening on this computer is its code. And yet, we act like the brain doesn't matter. The brain is it's the start. Everything, not just what you see, not just your logical thoughts, everything you experience, want, feel, it's activity in the brain, a brain that has been sort of constructed by evolution, by the pressures of natural selection for our ancestors, by your experiences since your birth. Understanding how that happens, what those natural selective forces were, and therefore what instincts you might already have, how can there be something more fundamental, more primordial, Can I use that word there? So it's crazy to me. I mean, the only thing the world needs to understand right now is psychology. And then we need to understand the world, which is physics. First, we need to understand our understanding of the world, how we understand the world. The worst part, and just so that you're sympathetic, the worst part is that I was saying after going for about an hour and 20 minutes, so over 30 minutes past when the stream had stopped, I was saying that I was running out of steam. So the public typically uses the word bias as a thing that a prejudice that we have, a preference for a thing. A cognitive bias is instead a thing that a systematic error in our thinking is typically how it's defined. Another typical definition that is not good is a deviation from reasoning or a distortion of reasoning or something that influences our reasoning. And so basically then we talked about how I also thought that we could say it influences, it distorts. I thought that we had this ego that was this self, this conscious agent, this rational human thing. And then we had this bid that was influencing, and we had to learn to separate ourselves from that and be the master of that, to be able to listen to our instincts and impulses without following them blindly, to apply our reasoning, but take into consideration our instincts. And then I started to realize about 8 years, so this whole idea was from 9 years ago. About 8 years ago, started realizing that there is a danger in thinking of ourselves as this reasonable ego, this self, and then that these biases are sort of external to us, and the dangers are that we think that we are then in control, that we can turn on the reasoning switch or turn it off, that we know when we are being reasonable or when we are not, and then so then we have no need for intellectual humility, which is basically to be able to say, I could be completely wrong about this. And for the record, I could be completely wrong about this. I am almost certainly wrong about most of the things that I'm saying, or I'm phrasing them in a way that I believe, but in a way that is incorrect. But hopefully the core of what I'm saying has some truth value to it. But it's really hard to be humble like that and to revise the self if we think of the self as this unit that is reasonable, this knowing thing. And we just need to be careful that biases don't influence us, but we ourselves are good. And so when we make a decision, it is from us. We would have known it if we were manipulated into it by some bias. So, when I think about something for a few seconds, that's me, and me is reasonable, and therefore the things that I think, my conclusions and my behaviors are reasonable. And so morally, that's a huge thing, because as I talked about in the previous video, we are all racist, but we don't like to admit it because we think of ourselves as one single thing, and so then obviously that one single thing is not racist, but in fact we are lots of things. There is a voice that knows that racism is bad. There's no real clear definition of racism in your brain. Probably, but there's a voice that says, "Oh, that word bad," and but there's also a voice that is always going to have a preference for the in-group as opposed to the out-group, and being aware of that is extremely important to being able to compensate for that. So if you have to make a decision between two people, by knowing that you are going to have a preference for if one is the member of the in-group and for him, as opposed to the other if it is a member of the See, I said him and then I said it. If he is a member of the out group, by knowing that, you can just say, okay, but literally let me write down the reasons that I might prefer this person. Because I know that my actual preference may just be because this person's the in group, but since I have to make a decision, let me sort of try as hard as I can to write down the reasons. Not just let me try to be reasonable, because you don't know what voice is speaking or what voice is voting. And then, of course, what happens is if we think that like we are by default reasonable and just need to avoid the influence of other biases, when other people say these things that we think are crazy and wrong, well, we go, well, you that like it doesn't even compute for us. Sometimes we say that they're crazy. Sometimes we say that they're just really dumb. Sometimes we say that they're evil. But really, we all have basically the same voices. And if you disagree with someone, it's probably just because different voices were triggered for them. But neither of you is really right. Um, During the French Revolution, there was this philosophy of sentimentalism, and people who were revolutionaries but disagreed with the current, the sort of with the majority of the with the other revolutionaries, well, they were assumed to be traitors because, well, we all have the truth in our hearts, so it's written on our hearts. So if you're saying this other idea, then you must be sent by the government. So we have this idea that truth is sort of written in us, and that we are this by default reasonable, which of course should make us very confused as to why we disagree with so many people about so many things, but it doesn't. We're too arrogant, so we're just like, oh, yeah, no, I'm being reasonable, they aren't. Then I had a long thing at several different points talking about how that relates to ADHD and depression. Basically, just that it's very easy to sort of not understand ADHD if you think of if you sort of have this sense that there's this ego, this controlling rational soul, because then, okay, yeah, maybe the brain or the unconscious or whatever, the instincts might be bad, but then you can just override that. You know you have ADHD, so then you can make the decision to get up and get out of bed, or you know you have depression, etc. And it's just really stupid and wrong, and I talked about it in the last video. So we're missing the lead up, maybe absolutely essential, but basically I realized, yeah, there is no ego. We are, and this is not even fun for you because it isn't fun for me. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We are going to stop now. We are going to stop now. Oh, I've been wanting to do this for years. We are going to stop now, though, because I need to feel it. Okay, let me try again. So, so we've got this. So the ego. No, can't do it. Can't do it. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Okay. So we've got this. So basically, all you are. No, can't do it. I talked about evolution. The ego does not exist. Does not mean it will produce the appropriate thoughts or behaviors. I don't think that's a typo there. Okay, so so the bid is there's no point explaining that and going through that again because the bid is everything. It is the mind. So let's just start off with evolution. Can't do it. Can not do it. cannot do it. I am not an integrate thing. I want to do it. I have the information in my mind. I am not able to execute right now. I got too involved in it. I was building, I was losing some steam, but at least I was explaining things well. Okay, so I'll just pick up where I left off, and then tonight I'll post the first part. So I had talked about evolution, and believe me, you were eating it up. You were like, oh wow, yeah, obviously we're just lines of code, and obviously we're just these simple imitations of reason, and these incoherent interacting parts, not a coherent whole. God, we were together. This video is so hard to make, and I'm sorry that I can't just move on. So what all that means, what that all means, that we are these incoherent. I am pushing so hard. Yes, so let's just keep going. So we have bad voices. We have these instincts. I have a preference for the in-group as opposed to the out-group. I am more wary of a member of the out-group, and I am more willing to punish a member of the out-group and more willing to forgive a member of the in-group. That is the part of my coding that made it possible that I exist. That was the coding that got selected by nature. That was the coding of my ancestors who survived and made it possible for me to be a descendant. That they were like, oh, people in my group are good, people outside. I do have a preference for more attractive people as it is defined for my species through my genes and then also by the media, because there are some things that genetically just aren't very attractive, but the media has sort of distorted into being attractive by accident, by exaggerating something that we genetically like. And then, of course, we learn that. And so, anyway. And I am the ensemble of all of those things. And basically, I can never be reasonable. I can never have a brain that takes in, first of all the information available to me. That's already impossible. Takes in all the information available to me and then compares all the information to each other according to other rules and information that I have, in order to then come to the conclusion that is best justified according to the physical properties and logical principles of the world. Not possible. We did not evolve that way, and you are arrogant for thinking so. Instead, we are just this imitation of reason, this thing that prefers things like us, things that are pretty, things that are shiny, etc. And then what we can do by knowing that is not just stop it from happening, is that we can start to install new rules. Luckily, we did evolve with a system to self-correct. If you think that this fruit is very good and you've had it a few times in this new area that your group has discovered, and then on the 5th time you get sick, your brain is probably going to correct and say, and attribute the sickness to that fruit and say, okay, no more of that fruit. A new voice will be installed, and the voice that says, oh, that fruit is nice, we like that, go to it, that will diminish. So luckily, we do have that ability to rewire. if we make the correct adjustment to our value system. Unfortunately, today opinions are venerated. Standing your ground is venerated. Changing your mind is seen as bad. We're entitled to our beliefs and all of that. And so what happens is you have these automatic judgments of something, and then you automatically justify them. Okay, because as if you watch the part that you couldn't possibly have watched yet, if you're watching live, then you know that. Shit, what did you say? Do you remember? These rules. I just completely lost my train of thought. Jeez, what was the last thing I was thinking about? All right, this was a little bit too Irish. We had bad voices in the. All right, so then if you know that, and if you know that you have all these bad voices, these things that can be wrong, and if you feel the importance of trying to evolve beyond your sort of starter kit of thinking, the sort of mechanisms and rules of interpretation that you evolved with, if you want to correct them, you can practice, make a habit of new ways of thinking, and more importantly, maybe even scratch what I just said. What you can do is by knowing some of your voices that are not good, that for instance, you have a preference for the in-group, or it's what I said earlier, you can put measures into place to try to compensate for that. If you have a conclusion, you never know automatically why you think a certain thing. Okay, so get that illusion out of your head. But what you can do is speculate. You can say, oh, I don't really like this person. And gosh, I probably have a voice that says, like, I don't like ugly people. If he were like pretty, you can maybe try to imagine or to compensate for that. Or you can just say, you know what, unless I can clearly say a specific thing that he said, and even on further scrutiny, that thing holds, and I'm not in an auto justification mood, not that you could possibly really know, unless that's the case, I'm just not going to write this person off. So the implications, we have bad voices, and that's okay. It was only the voices that we have is just meant to fucking fight. It wasn't meant to think about philosophy, politics, and all the things of the modern age. So it's okay. It's okay that you're racist. It's okay that you're starting out racist, sexist. It's okay that you're such a piece of shit. But you just have to admit that, and then question that, and then be humble, and then basically the solution is, if you refute, you can mute the voice, called Hebbian learning, right? If you use neural networks, they reinforce. It's not like your choice, okay, using this neural network. But if a neural network produces a behavior, and that behavior is rewarded, and it does that more and more, then it's going to be reinforced. So there's two things that I think you need to do in order to change a voice. One is that you need to refute it. You need to look at the information, that the counterexample, the counter argument, the counter evidence. You need to look at it, stick it in your brain by really confronting it, reading it, believing it, reminding yourself of it. And then what that does is it strengthens that counter evidence voice that you're now introducing. It strengthens it, which then mutes the voice that wanted you to go for this thing. So for instance, there is a guy that you don't, so let's say I'm talking, well, actually it doesn't matter. I don't want to be heteronormative. So you're talking to, there's a guy that you are with that you know is bad for you. If you really tell yourself, if you really review those reasons that he's bad for you, that will have a muting effect on your inclination toward him. And then also, no heed, no need. So if you don't call him, if you are able to somehow resist by calling a friend or whatever, and you don't heed that impulse, that neural network, that voice that's saying, go see him, then the neural network will understand, okay, I am not needed. I am not heeded, I am not needed. Again, basic Hebbian learning. And then also, of course, you can speculate, like, oh yeah, in the environment my ancestors evolved in, they probably would have had this instinct, which is not very good for me. So they probably would have wanted, I don't know, this tall guy, or I don't know. And I sound like an incel. Reasoning is probably impossible. I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense, biologically speaking, how that could ever exist, a system that is reasonable. The only thing you can do is imitate reason. So then you have error detection, compensation. So we mustn't s'en vouloir for our initial coding. We don't have to be mad at ourselves. We're not stupid, we're not evil, and that's about integration and all that, but whatever. So we have to learn these mistakes that we make, and then just be happily on the lookout for them. And I am, I know that I miss a lot of my mistakes, but also it feels good to me because of my value system when I catch myself making a mistake. Now, of course, not all the time, right? I'm working on it. I know that I'm not going to even notice that I'm making mistakes when I'm talking about certain things, Anyway, the judge may have talked about it. Okay, so now I just really have to pee. Oh yeah, no, I was talking to Neo. Okay, I have to pee. I have to pee. How do I? Oh, ay, ay, ay. Gotta pee. Okay. It's honestly not a big deal. Everything that. Oh, go piss, girl. Oh, hey, Cairo. My sister's watching. That's pretty cool. My mama. And two people. That's good enough for me. So, Oh, fuck! No! Okay. All right. Computer did not fall. All right. Hi. All right. And honestly, that wasn't the whiskey. It was the I mean, I look like an absolute idiot right now, but it honestly wasn't that. It's just that I had tried to find a good spot that was away from the rocks to have good enough service, but it's all slanted here. Oh, I'm not gonna. Yeah. Anyway, so let's. That's good. Then that's fun because there's a funny thing that happened in the last video, so I'm glad we were able to still have fun together there. And okay, nope. See, the table's gonna collapse. All right, so basically we're just gonna define some terms, how you can think about yourself, and then okay. Okay, great. Incoming call. Oh no, did I lose connection? Oh, am I no longer live? Is that what the incoming call is? Can someone send a message if I'm live? Oh, she said computer is good, so I don't know why. Did I lose my connection? I don't know whether I'm live. It's red. Okay, now it's yellow. Oh, I'm here. Great. Okay. Thanks, Cairo. Okay. Sorry, I've got so many leggings. My my member got a little bit. Okay. All right. All set. Don't know why I'm getting a call, but I'm going to. Oh, you guys can't see me because I'm getting this call. Oh, call's gone. Okay. Hey, guys. So. Okay, oops. All right. Great. So. What does this all mean? So, I'm so mad that you guys missed the other stuff. But again, this is probably most people are watching this are probably watching this in like the year 2060. So now here's the vocabulary. A voice. It is a mental operation. You can think of this as an if-then processing rule. If I see this, I do this. If these other neurons say this, then I say this. And that's how the brain works. You have all these networks communicating. And so you could sort of label each one of these. And each of these cognitive biases we can call each of these cognitive biases we can call a voice. And we can call it a maladaptive voice in the context. There are some voices that we have that are maladaptive in this environment in the 21st century. And then there are some that are just maladaptive in the specific context that you're talking about. For instance, if someone comes running towards you, if they're a jogger and you are on alert, well, you don't need to be on alert. That's not an adaptive reaction. And also sometimes it's maladaptive because a voice will have influence that it shouldn't. And what I mean by that is that typically it is good, for instance, to be wary of someone with a criminal record, say. So that voice can be maybe adaptive generally. But then let's say that you know what happened for this person, and it actually, therefore, because of what you know about it, because of what happened with the person, because of what happened with the person, you know that it actually shouldn't affect your judgment. But just the fact that he is a criminal and has a criminal record will activate a voice, which we will consider maladaptive in that context, because it should be diminished by another voice who says, "Oh no, we know what he did, and actually, like he's not a bad person." So then, okay. So then next. Okay, so then things that slap. Things that slap are just things that trigger a voice, and then the delivery is the behavior, attitude, or emotion, or feeling, or whatever that the voice produces. And so you can say, oh, you can tell with this person that a certain voice delivered because he was clearly the better candidate. Like the only reason she could have gone against him, let's say you judge in the situation, is that the guy's black, for instance. And so that in-group, out-group really delivered there. That in-group, out-group delivered, and the voice, because that person also probably knows that racism is bad and doesn't want to be racist, right? Most of us don't like racism and all that stuff, but like I said, we are all racist. And then sometimes it's not our anti-racism that delivers or that has the most important influence. It is instead our more primitive sort of instinct of other and us. Which, by the way, I won't say that we evolved to be racist, because actually in our evolution we didn't encounter a whole lot of people of other races. But to have a distinction between us and them, that we did have plenty of opportunities. They are from another community, they may try to steal my stuff, or are they a member of my community and cooperative? And then this vocabulary is really important for talking about any when you agree with something, stuff like that. Rather than assuming that if something seems right to you, that's because it is right, because I'm a reasonable interpreter and all that. What I like to say is that sings. Ah, my instincts, my lines of code are going, okay, cool. I have no idea whether you just said is true or valuable, really, but I know that I evolved with detectors that are giving me a thumbs up for what you just said. Again, I have very little faith in my detectors, so I want to keep thinking about it, expose my detectors to more of what you're saying and get more of my detectors involved so I can really react to the nuances of what you're saying. But I know that sings. And so you can like marketing, it's all about creating ads that sing, that get the brain going, okay, cool, 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 right? And the things that most quickly and most easily get the brain singing are very easy to trigger. You can do it with colors and lights and celebrity status and so on. And then Shope is just the opposite. And so sometimes something will be right, but it seems wrong because it Shopes. It triggers alarms in your brain. These alarms that we've evolved with or had installed by society. And so we'll be like, oh, no, 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 I don't agree with that. That's wrong. And then typically what we do is then find why we think that's wrong. I mean, not why we actually think that's wrong, but why that could be wrong, or what garbage we can say in order to prove that it's wrong. When in fact, it's just that it set off some alarms, and actually you shouldn't have had faith in that in the first place. So when something sings or when something shopes, I don't say, oh, I agree or I disagree, I think this or I think that. I'm like, my brain is sort of responding well to that, or my brain is not responding well to that, but I have no idea whether there's actually a problem there, whether it's just a word that used that triggered a weird reaction in me, etc. And then basically, when something is valet, something is valed, to use English conjugations, but I want to use French, so valet, and which is Spanish means like, got it. When something is valet, it's like the brain is like, okay, like we're okay, like going along with this. And again, if we don't trust our brain, then just because something seems right doesn't mean that it is right, and we understand that we're not going to talk about. Chimiza, this is something that we do all the time. I was about to say that like many people do, but no, that all of us do all the time, is that we have a conclusion, judgment, behavior, whatever, and then we attribute that to a voice, but it's not actually the voice that led to that behavior or that belief. So I talked about in the other video, part that you didn't see, about this experiment about competitors' faces, and then you have to. They were political opponents, and subjects had to say which face looked more competent. And then there was a significantly important amount of the time that the face that was identified as as appearing more competent was the face of the person who won the election. If you so that shows that we are influenced by how we rate within a second the features of the face to judge competence. That influences our voting decision, but of course nobody will actually ever say or ever realize, oh, I think it was because, for me it was definitely this guy's face, right? And so instead we will say, we will misattribute our behavior, our decision, whatever, to a different voice or a piece of information, etc. And then the real voice that caused us to, or that played the biggest role in whatever we do, is called the VAT. Okay, you can also maj, and we do that all the time, and it's basically rationalization or justification. You believe something to be true, so you have this belief delivered, this action delivered, this statement delivered, and then you go with it. You presume that it is true and that it is worthwhile, and then you justify it. And we can get very, very carried away when we should have in the first place gone, holy shit, this thing seems really true to me, but why? But instead, then we just start piling on stuff that is bad, or sometimes we're so convinced by the actual voice that produced that delivery that we just reproduce that voice to others. Oh, you can't trust him, he's a dirty Mexican. There's somebody who's actually going to say that, right? And that's called melaging, because you are majing, digging your heels in, committing yourself to this bad delivery by repeating the original VAT, which was a maladaptive voice. You can also misage, which means to self-justify and rationalize and so on and dig your heels in. And typically by distracting from the actual thing that led you to your what you believe or what you think, whatever, give some irrelevant or even untrue or whatever premises. You do not do any of this intentionally. This is all just in your programming. Wikipedia's definition of cognitive bias: a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality and judgment. Very, very stupid. It is so insanely stupid to me how anybody could possibly believe that we could have evolved to be reasonable. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I talked a lot in the previous video about energy efficiency, and I don't even think it's like possible. I can't even imagine. Just because I can't imagine something doesn't mean it's not possible. But I cannot imagine a thing whose lines of code are basically just like finding truth. You would have to program into the interpreter things that we haven't even figured out about the world or about logic yet. It makes no sense. It's so dumb. Yeah, cool. So I guess we're gonna leave it there. Okay, no, we'll leave it at the judge myth. So the judge myth I already talked about in the previous thing, but I wasn't live. So I spent a long time talking about how many selves there are. And it's a really important component of this whole discussion. In history, mythology, folklore, popular, whatever, the number of selves tends to range between maybe 1 and like 4 maximum. So maybe there's the one, there's just the soul, the me, the I, so Lewis Carroll talks about you are a soul, you have a body, right? So this body is my periphery. I am one thing. I am this soul. Sometimes there's the self, and then there's like a conscience, which is this other voice. So then we're two things. Sometimes there's two things, like two wolves. Sometimes there's two things, like my emotional side and my rational side. By the way, basically everything I'm saying is bullshit. But this is sort of how we've seen things. Freud has 3: id, ego, superego. So how you can imagine incorrectly, however, of many of those you like. And if we imagine that as a courtroom, then you might imagine that the main self, the ego, the conscious self, the person on whose shoulders are the other selves, that's like the judge, right? The rational interpreter and processor of information and values. And then you've got your heart making its case, your mind making its case, whatever. And so that's how we might imagine the self, and that would be wrong. And so what I want to do is, knowing that these different cognitive biases exist, we're going to continue to pretend like they influence us just to evolve the metaphor until it's correct. So now you can imagine in-group, out-group, halo bias, halo effect, hindsight bias, availability heuristic, endowment effect. I mean, there are hundreds of these things that they are, like at a town hall meeting, members in the court that are yelling out things. They all have different information, and they're all very focused on their own thing. He's from another group. He's bad. Hey, that belongs to us. Therefore, it is more valuable, and whatever. And they're shouting at each other, sometimes about the same thing. Usually, lots of different conversations being had. And so then you imagine that you are yourself the judge, and you have to listen to these biases and not be too influenced by them, and be reasonable and so on. That is a myth. There is no judge, actually. That's an illusion, as much of an illusion as free will. Actually, your mind is the town hall meeting without any of the officials. There are certain voices that have more weight, maybe. Whether they should have more weight or voting power, I don't know. So you might have a taller city person or a rich voice that a lot of people want to listen to, that has a great deal of influence in the decision making process and in what gets delivered. Uh, but that voice was listened to because it was generally advantageous for our ancestors, and our environment is very different right now, and also each situation has different nuances. So there is no judge, and that's I spent 45 minutes like having this realization with you uh, that I am rushing through now. Um, just there is no judge, there is no you. You do not exist. And so then through refuting and muting, through not needing, not heeding, and through just some humility, we can realize that we are just this noisy gymnasium of idiots that like kind of got it right most of the time about like fighting and fucking, but when it comes to things that are considered important nowadays, when it comes to the fact that we now live in this diverse world where we're constantly encountering people we might have otherwise categorized as the out group, well, there's some major adjustments that need to be made, some townspeople that need to be quieted, some new townspeople that need to be introduced. And so that's the hope, is that by having that humility, I need to make sure I'm still alive. By having that humility, that we can realize, I need to get that townsperson out of there and blah blah. And just trusting ourselves less, trusting the image of that cacophony less, and 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 honestly, there's something really easy that can settle a lot of differences. It's just information. There's so many questions that we disagree about, but we actually have the information to know one way or the other. But information doesn't trigger voices. We had to evolve like that. We had to evolve to make very quick decisions and then stick with those, which I was kind of explaining in the previous video. Yeah. So we need to become a little bit more evidence-based, because now we can. I'm sitting here. I'm not worried about predators, prey, starving, or anything like that. I can now pay attention to the nuance and look at the evidence rather than just relying on hunches. Just remind you, your hunches don't feel like hunches. But if you think that you have an answer to a question in a few seconds, or even in a few minutes, or even with however little information you have, you're arrogant. And we all are. We're all very arrogant. We overestimate our reasoning, or we overestimate ourselves. We think that we're... Anyway, so, great. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Integration. Okay, I'm gonna pee, and then we are going to talk about integration, because it is a major. It's major. So I had thought that. So in 2014, came up with the bid ego Sid. Thought that was a great way to present things, but it was pretty much in line with the way that we already saw ourselves, with this ego and this other part and stuff, that influenced us. Then I realized, there is no ego. That we are actually just the activity, the basic instincts that we were programmed with. Then I used them. I had the ego myth. Then I used the metaphor of a court. So I called it the judge myth, and I thought this was major. And then I realized that there is something else extremely important, which is called the integration myth. So let's imagine our courtroom. Let's imagine that what gets delivered, it's the decisions that we thought the judge was writing, and we thought the judge was trying to avoid being influenced by, bad voices and listen to the good ones and stuff. But actually, we realized there is no judge, so it's basically just whichever townsperson grabs the pen. Um, there's a lot of connectivity in the brain. Obviously, it's amazing. There's not enough connectivity for every voice to talk to every other voice. There is also just our brain just isn't sophisticated enough to sort of automatically give the true appropriate weights to each voice. And so that explains how you are able to know something and then not do the thing that would be appropriate, or how you're able to want something and not do the thing that would be appropriate. Um, so an example of that would be, as I talked about, and I volunteered with a group that was helping refugees, and they definitely had voices in their head that were like, racism is bad, all people are equal, or whatever. And yet, there we encountered a situation where two people, and separated by just a few months, were accused of bad things. One was a member of the out group for anybody involved except for himself, and the other was a member of the in group for the people involved as well. And the member of the out group was told to never step foot there again 10 minutes after he showed his face after the accusation had been received, even though the accuser, who was not the victim, told the organization not to do anything because it had been resolved. Whereas the member of the in-group who had been accused of something which I'd consider worse, and I think anybody who I gave the details would as well, stayed on for another 6 months until, because of me, eventually, well, it wasn't my intention, but and even took on leadership positions after the accusation was received, took on leadership positions. And so how's that possible? But they're not racist, of course not. Well, it's possible because they have some voices that champion these modern ideals and stuff. But they're not integrated. Just because they have those voices doesn't mean those voices that influence everything else going around in their mind and what gets delivered. In fact, those voices may have very little to do with their behavior. Those voices may just be most active when they talk about their behavior or their ideas. But in their actual perception, judgment, reaction to things, those cultural ideals may play much less of a role than we think. Which, if you know anything about psychology or evolution, makes a lot of sense. And no offense, sorry if you don't. And then, of course, if you do, and I'm wrong about this, oops, please let me know. So the human brain not being integrated is enormous, because what that means is that you cannot judge someone's set of voices based on their behavior. You don't know. So here's an example. Comedian, saw her on Instagram, Australian Indian woman. She says that I'm a woman of color, and what that basically means is that weird shit happens to you when you're not white, or that doesn't happen if you're white. For instance, my first day on 3 different jobs as a refugee lawyer, they thought I was the refugee and not the lawyer. And I was like, and then the audience like, oh, yikes. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I find it problematic that everybody's groaning about being confused with a refugee. And people said, no, that's not the problem. The problem is that those people thought that because she was colored, she couldn't be a lawyer. They thought that lawyers had to be white. No, they didn't. Those people don't exist. Nobody who... Oh, am I off? Let me see. Getting an incoming call, but I wouldn't be getting an incoming call if I was still going, right? Let's just reject the call. And hopefully someone will say in the chat if, oh no, maybe I am. Hello?
Hello?
Hi. Wait, tu sais, je suis en live là.
Encore?
Ben oui. Ok. Mouah, je t'aime. Salut. Okay. So can you guys like see me now? No, not yet. Okay, so now you can see me. Am I still connected? Cairo, can you confirm again, please? Or I'll just assume and continue. So you can very well see now it says 0 kilobytes per second. Okay, so no, those people that were like, "Oh, just through this way, please." I mean, that's what I'm imagining. I don't think that anyone said, like she said, "Hi, where do the lawyers go?" And then maybe she said, "Where do the lawyers go?" And someone said, "Oh, actually, you can wait for your lawyer just over there." You know, I don't think anybody said, "You're not the lawyer." And she's like, "Yeah, no, I am." No, lawyers have to be white. No, no, no. Or even without saying that, they were just like, no, no, no. It was probably just this immediate miscategorization. Um, the brain is not integrated. It's not because we treat someone like they have to be a refugee because they're colored, that actually in the brain that we think they have to be a refugee just because they are colored. The brain is constantly making assumptions, quick judgments, and acting and reacting as quickly as it can. So this is a very I think I keep freezing and unfreezing, but we're almost done. So this is really huge, and actually, it's so funny because this is huge for it's huge for everybody. And with my girlfriend, for instance, we're able to talk about it, and maybe one of us will do something or say something, and we'll be like, "Wait a minute, that doesn't at all match what your other values are, whatever." Um, And then sometimes a person will deny things about them um, because they conflict with other parts of their self. And so they're like, well, that can't possibly be true about me because I believe this. And so if we realize that we're not integrated, we realize, oh shit, it is possible. It is possible for me to be racist even though I'm against racism. It is absolutely possible for me to be sexist even though I want to value intellectually I value the sexes equally. And so once you accept that integration is a myth, you realize, oh, I don't exist. I'm just a bunch of these voices. And I should expect for bad voices to deliver because I have done zero work on this. I just evolved and came about this world and started believing in all my instincts and trusting my intuition. So I'm in a world that looks like this, even though my brain evolved in a world that looked like that. And also, I want to be more right than they were. If they were right 75% of the time, I'd like to be right, closer to 90, 95%, especially about the things that matter. So we just have some work to do. Okay, good. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you. Bye. You will not be able to reconnect.